welcome to this edition of Small Business Breakthroughs presented by the Ohio Small Business Development Center at Columbus State Community College. My name is Mike Bowers. I'm the Center Director for the Ohio SBDC at Columbus State. And this is a special episode, not only because Rick Slark's here, that makes it special all the time, but this is actually our 50th episode, which is just kind of a big deal for us. I think you were telling me the average podcast makes about what, three episodes?
Three episodes, yeah.
Yeah. So this has been something we've really enjoyed. I think it started obviously during the pandemic because we wanted to do something, and we've been able to keep it together. And we look forward to continuing to do this into the future. And I've got some ideas to expand this too. So we'll be doing some new stuff too. So keep tuned for what's going on there. I do want to start out and acknowledge our partner, the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center. And we have a location in the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center. I've been involved with the DEC for well over 15 years. And we're really excited to have a new person going to tell us a little bit about the DEC. We have Rebecca Parker. She is the property manager for Dark Points, and Dark Points is the data center of which owns the DEC, and actually the DEC is built around the data center. So that's kind of a cool piece, and especially for clients or folks or residents or people that have offices or whatever there, they can be close to their data on the data center if they use that. So Rebecca, you want to share a little bit about the DEC?
Yes, I would love to. I actually have been here a little less than a year. So we're talking about an enterprise that began far before my joining. And I can remember when I interviewed for the position here, I was absolutely amazed by the concept. Several years ago, what was then the Metro data center and the city of Dublin joined together to sponsor a project called the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center. We call it the DEC for short. And it was an opportunity for new businesses, young businesses to get a start with some assistance. Some office space to set up in, meeting rooms, a facility that they could bring their customers and clients to and, feel good about how they were presenting themselves. It also provided a number of programs, training sessions on setting up new businesses and marketing and strategic planning, working with staffing, getting funding, that kind of thing. So it made sense for them to have someone like Mike and the Small Business Development Center as a critical partner. And they have been a partner since the very beginning, continue to be, and offer programs like this. So to not only are they open to businesses who are here on the DEC, but obviously other small businesses throughout the area, as some of you are attending today. In the most recent year, the city of Dublin is no longer a sponsor of the DEC from a financial perspective. They do continue to partner with us in terms of referring people who are interested in space that can be leased here on the floor. And we have, continued to lease space, and we have a variety of different spaces. People are interested, anything from what we call a hotspot, which gives you access to the building, access to the meeting rooms, and a mailing location, a place for mail to come. You could go for a cube, If you want, you don't need a lot of space or you don't need private space, but you do want permanent space and you can come back and forth to leave your belongings, that kind of thing. We have small offices, medium-sized offices. We have offices that have windows, and I'm gonna get up, so just excuse me for a second. Hi, Mark.
Very environmental.
Yes.
Access or decent
Yep.
and then five doors.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
We just got a delivery. One of our mailing services. I'm sitting right at the front door. Bye, Mark. Have a good one. And so so there's a good demonstration of one of your services. You've got packages coming in, mail coming in, they get delivered here. And we have a mail room set aside for our tenants. We have tenants all over the spectrum of businesses, technology, tourism. Oh, let's see, we have some scientific study kinds of things going on, environmental, protection. There's just a number of things, art, illustration. So we are more than happy to provide tours of the facility for anyone who is interested in space here. And I think that's kind of about it for the deck. I'm a big fan because I'm amazed at the brain power that sits around this floor. And really I'm interested in getting them more interacting with one another, helping one another, doing some brain trust, brain sharing kinds of things. So it's a wonderful program, and I'm open to any questions you might have.
So if individuals are interested in looking at space, having a conversation with you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
The best way would be by email, and that would be rebecca.parker@dartpoints.com. You could also phone at 614-408-9061.
Great. Yeah, as I said, I've been involved with the deck for a number of years, and I've always said that the thing I really like about it is you have a number of entrepreneurs there of different industries, different work, but different experience levels too. So you may have a question that comes up that you're wrestling with as an entrepreneur, and there may be somebody sitting right next to you in the office next to you that you can go and get some assistance. So it's a great space. I highly encourage folks to check it out and reach out to Rebecca and see if it would meet your needs. Also, with that, I want to mention that the next Small Business Breakthrough will be June 26th at 2 o'clock. So we're kind of off times here. But we'll actually have a deck resident, a tenant, Tyler Smith of Dark Rhino Security is going to be on. And we're going to be talking about a variety of things from his entrepreneurial journey, as well as IT and computer security and artificial intelligence too. So that'll be an exciting program, and I hope everybody jumps on for that. Obviously my main question for Tyler would be this AI thing. Is it more like Battlestar Galactica or like the Matrix? I don't know which one, where the machines take over. But Rebecca, thank you for your time, and I really appreciate you jumping on here with us.
You're welcome. No problem.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get going with the session today. This is something that I think is really critical for entrepreneurs. It's really critical for us to think about if we're in a business, we start a business, we build the business, and then we're in a growth mode. You know, what does that mean? How do we do that? I mean, we probably have all heard the stories of, you know, this founder trying to figure out how to cross the chasm and grow and do different things like that. Well, we're going to dive into that, and we're going to talk about actually scaling and what the entrepreneur and that individual needs to do with that business, so that business can work appropriately with that. And if you are interested, we're going to let these guys introduce themselves. But Rick was on a previous small business breakthrough. I want to say it was May of 2023. So if you're interested, I encourage you to go check that out. Rick was telling me he did check it out, and he was pretty impressed with his performance.
I was not.
So, but anyway, we will, but that is up, and I did listen to it, and I thought it was really good. So that would be a great add-on to what we're going to be talking about today. So Rick, why don't we start with you? Why don't you tell us a little bit about you, your background, your experience, what you do, and then we'll kind of jump into some questions here after we talk together.
Okay. So I was a pastor for 25 years and ended up doing, in the pastoring, I ended up consulting with churches and nonprofits. I've always been doing that, right? As to how to grow your church, how to develop your church, how to be more effective. So I did that. And then I moved into the business world. And so when I started doing that, developing kind of the same role, right? Somebody told me one day, you have this pastoral way to deal with it, and it really is just moving into the business world now. And so I kind of see it that way. But I'm fascinated by how things work, why they work the way they work, why they don't work, and it's always been a fascination for me. And so from there, I've developed my own consulting business, and where I work with growth companies, and those are the companies that I spend all my time with, is in this world of scaling and a lot of messiness. There's a lot of, it's not neat, it's not clean, it's messy, it's frustrating, it's tiring. You're dealing with owners who are exhausted, who don't know what to do. They feel like the business is falling apart, right, around them. And so it is, but it's so rewarding to help them untangle those things and to get on the right track and to get moving forward. So I spend a lot of time doing that. The other thing I really enjoy doing is I help several SBDCs across the state and love working with the SBDCs. I think they do a fabulous job. This free service that they provide is high quality, and I just think it's amazing, the services they use. So I like to give back and do that too.
Great. Kevin, you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm Kevin Hammond. Been with the SBDC since at least mid-'80s or so. No, I'm just kidding, not quite that long, but yeah,
It's been a while.
it has been a long time. Yeah, I love what I do. It's a lot of fun. Work with all kinds of businesses, all the way from, I got an idea I want to take forward, up to, the growth companies and so forth that, been around for a while, with a few million dollars in sales and those kind of things there, and essentially help them with challenges, solving challenges, taking advantage of opportunities. And, it means lots of different things, being that second set of ears and eyes on things, helping them navigate challenges and so forth, just giving them guidance, being that, business coach and so forth is so valuable. Just, when you have your own business, you always need someone else, an outlet, because you're so focused on things that's an important thing. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm happy to be here today, and can't wait to talk about what we're going to talk about.
Great, great. So as I said before, we're going to talk about this growth and this scaling of the business. But Kevin, you made a point here, and I'd like you guys kind of talk about it. When you think about the entrepreneur, the founder, when these are folks in my mind that they start the business, They're the ones that probably by themselves go to the website and file their LLC and do their things there and start to
Sure.
build it
Yeah,
up from there. You know, you talk about working with businesses, you know, few $1 million in sales. I mean, I would think for that startup entrepreneur that, you know, this is day 2 of the business or day 10 of the business. Thinking about $millions in sales, that's got to be quite daunting. What do you think?
It's definitely a daunting thing to think that far ahead. You know, that's why we always try to encourage entrepreneurs to, you know, think, you know, what's your vision for this business? You know, a year out, 3 years, and then, you know, start with that 5 year and then let's work our way back. And it's personal to each entrepreneur. You know, some businesses don't want to get real big. They don't want to have employees. They just want to have, you know, a job that they can control that's their own business, kind of solopreneur, which is perfectly fine. So it's really, you know, establishing the vision that they want. And if they want 5 million, 10 million, or the next, you know, big business, you know, we certainly can help them with that. But it takes planning, it takes vision, and so forth.
Yeah, most of these businesses have emptied their 401k,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Or grandma has given them some money. And so they are scared, number one. A lot of them have some confidence, but most of them are pretty trepidatious about what's going on. And I think it's really important to understand in that place, and I've said this before, in the startup phase, the strategy, people always ask me, what's the strategy when you're in startup phase? It is to get out of it as fast as you can, right? You do not want to stay long in that area. And the big thing is you have this money that you've invested, and that money is going down every day, right? You're spending, so that money is going down every day, downhill. It's like, you know, like you're just going right downhill. And the idea is to find your profitable, sustainable market. Profitable, sustainable market. Very important. Profitable and sustainable. Not one-off, but this, I can make a living on this. It's profitable and sustainable market before the money runs out. And that really is the goal for a startup. It is, you have this money, it's going down that you've invested, and you want the business to be able at some point to intersect with the money going down and the money coming up. And that's profitability right there, right? That's just profitability. And so the sooner that you can create income, the less you will lose, right? Your spend. And so that's how you know that, or that's the only role that you really have as a startup, is to get out of it and to find your profitable, sustainable market before the money runs out.
Yeah, I like this, your comment there about, you know, this intersection point, you know, and that's critical. And, you know, we deal with entrepreneurs all the time. I deal with folks. As a matter of fact, I do our startup class, which I did last night. And, you know, there's folks in there that they don't really have a concept of the money part. And this is beyond just, hey, I don't understand P&Ls. You know, they don't understand what you just said, that you have to have a certain amount of money. That money's going down. You got to figure out how to make money going the other way.
So the other night I was on a panel with a guy that is part owner of Quick Stop, the wings place. Mm-hmm. So he's one of the owners of Quick Stop, and he was on the panel with me, and we were talking, and he made a comment to the audience who were new entrepreneurs about what he expects out of $1, right? He says that they are very happy if they can make 20 cents on the dollar, right? Now that's high in the restaurant business. It's normally around 5 to 6%, but they do delivery only and all of that. And it was shocking to see the faces of the folks in the audience. What do you mean? You're making all this money, it's coming in every day, and you're happy with making 20 cents on the dollar? It was a revelation to them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what they're not really understanding. So when I say that you have to understand your numbers, it's much more than just, you know, here's my expenses, here's this. I mean, it's the margin and how all of this works together, which ultimately will bring you to what we're really going to try to talk about today.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you have anything you want?
Yeah, I mean, understanding the numbers is a big challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs. Yeah, I say maybe 20% of my new businesses have a decent handle on numbers. That's about it. But they need to understand that. And I always tell them, it's like, okay, maybe numbers isn't your favorite thing. And traditionally it's not. You know, entrepreneurs want to be selling and building and doing the fun stuff. Numbers maybe not the most fun thing, but numbers tell a story. And you need to know your numbers. You need to know margins. You need to figure out what's your, cost of goods sold, net profit, being careful taking on fixed expenses. And then when you're getting just in the early stages, you don't want to take on a bunch of debt, right? You want to be bootstrapping. You want to go in lean, start out with one aspect of your business. Doesn't have to be everything that you're going to want in your grand vision. What's the minimum viable kind of thing you can do just to get started? And then you can work those things out, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're making them on a small scale. That's just a smarter way to get started.
Yeah, I like to tell people that when they're at these earlier stages and they're coming in, we need to get a loan. I need $100,000, and they don't really understand. Okay, that means they're probably going to have a $2,000 a month payment.
Yeah.
And I explained this to somebody the other day that you realize when you have that payment, how much that impacts your independence and it impacts your flexibility. You can't make these kind of shifts when you know that, hey, I got a $2,000 payment staring me down.
Yeah, and in the sales process, if you're desperate to make a sale, people smell that all over you, right? And so you cannot be that way. On the other side of that, I've dealt with a lot of very well-funded startups, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with being a well-funded startup is you get lazy.
Yep.
And you fail to find your profitable, sustainable market because you got money. And so you're spending time decorating the office, right?
Right.
And the reality is you have to find your profitable, sustainable market, whether you're well-funded or whether you are not well-funded. You're a little more desperate about it when you're not well-funded, right? Yeah. But some of these businesses get really healthy amounts of capital and they still don't find their market, and that money's going to run out. It just takes it a little longer, right? But it's going to run out and they're going to go bankrupt. And you see that with tech businesses or whatever, right? Constantly.
Yeah, I mean, I used to run a venture capital association here in town, and that was always the thing, you're asking for X amount of money to do what you're talking about doing here. However, if you're undercapitalized, you've got to be creative and you've got to bootstrap and do things you need to do. Probably better for the business as a whole.
Correct.
If you're overcapitalized, if you have systems put into place, which a lot of times are not going to have in those early stages, maybe then it's like pouring gas on a fire and you're going to be able to scale. But, I've seen a number of businesses that have gotten that funding and have gone out of business because they can't find that market. They can't find the people that will buy from them. They have a product, it's kind of a cool product, but it's either not meeting their need or they're ahead of their time or they're behind the time and missed the market window or something like that. It just really creates a situation where you got a business that's got millions of dollars in funding. It's just hard to fathom that they're not going to be able to succeed.
Yeah. So I have this thought about that is I believe every business, whether it's well-funded or not, starting up, has to go through the life cycles, right? Mm-hmm. And what you try to do when you're way invested, you're heavily capitalized, is you're trying to bypass all of these lessons learned through these different stages. Mm-hmm. And all you are is a rich kid, right? Yeah. Right? Your business is just a rich kid that doesn't know anything or know how to live a life, right? I think that you have to go through these stages of business life in order to, I just think it's like natural, right? You have to go through the adolescence and the terrible twos and all of that. I think you have to go through that, and you cannot bypass that. And you'll see that in big companies that are really big companies that think they can get into a new market by starting a small business inside of the big business, right? And it's the same kind of thing, is they try to bypass all of this lifestyle stuff.
Right. We have a question in the chat. Kevin, you want to touch on this? You know, the question is, most people begin with an idea. What do you do to kind of coach them into understanding numbers? You run our BizStart program, which really starts to build into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, with BizStart, it's our second phase in our startup process, and they go through 4 modules, and part of that covers the numbers. So we go over, we first focus on, for the numbers part, pricing, because you got to first understand, what's the price points the market could bear, but even backing up from there, what's your cost, right? Especially if you're selling something tangible. You got something tangible, but you got cost to get sold. You got material costs. You got to make sure you account for all those things. And, a lot of times folks kind of think they got the idea, but until you really break it down, you're not going to know. So that's the first thing that I help clients with the numbers, is let's figure out your pricing system, what's it can take to convert and so forth, your cost structure, your variable cost of goods sold. And then from there, taking that, and let's look at profit and loss projection. And just on a small scale, let's just look at, for now, let's just look at the first quarter of your operations. And what does that look like, right? And all businesses that start small, right? No business just wakes up and is big. So it takes time. So you got to think about, all right, what's my fixed cost levels to begin with? And you want to keep that as low as you can, because that's the ones you have the most control over, is those fixed costs. So we also, the way I help clients with their numbers is, let's look at what your peers are doing, right? You're in a business that other people, you have competition. Every business has competition, which I always say is a good thing. And what's their metrics, right? What's their average margins? So, if you can at least make sure within that range of what is normal, what is a benchmark, then you're on the right track there. And it can take time, but we definitely coach folks with that, because that is kind of a universal problem with entrepreneurs with the numbers in the beginning. And I always tell them, you can learn the numbers. It takes time. It's going to hurt, but you'll get to the point where you know your numbers. You might have an accountant that's doing the back end stuff. But you as a CEO, you need to be able to rattle off what's your gross margin, what's your profit margin, those kind of things there. And we help you with that.
Rick, when you're dealing with businesses that are starting to progress, they're in that growth phase, they've been in business a few years, they've kind of mastered the numbers from an entrepreneurial founder perspective, but now they're going into growth phase where they've got a lot of new moving parts around their numbers. What are the same things you counsel them on to help them continue to progress?
So last night I was on a call with a client, and the business is like it's a tangled mess. It's like a ball of twine. It's just like a fishing line, that's just totally a mess. And I asked him a question. He's talking about, well, I'm not getting as many opportunities to pitch my business or to opportunities to sell. And I said, how do you know? I said, how many pitches have you made, sales pitches have you made at the first of the year? Oh, I don't know. So you're just saying by intuitiveness or by gut that I'm not getting enough pitches.
Mm-hmm.
When you're moving beyond into a growth stage, data becomes very important, and the way that you understand data is very important. And so the first thing that he needs to do, he doesn't know how many pitches he made, right? He doesn't know that. It's just something I don't feel like I am. Well, that doesn't work when you are in this phase. You have to have some way to track the data. And that is one of the important parts of growing the business is what do you need to measure? And then creating a way to measure it. And it could be very simple. It could just be a notebook, right? I wrote down, I pitched this guy, right? And did you get it or not? Did you get that pitch or not? So now we understand I pitched 20 times this year and I got 8 of them, right? Well, what's industry standard? 30% maybe, right? So let's say you're under 30% of what you should be, or you're above it. So if you're way below the industry standard of what you're not getting those that you pitched, why? Now we work on that, right? But you first, before you can fix anything, you have to have a clear understanding of where you are.
Right.
And most of them, you know, if you've ever driven by and seen, you know, a contractor with all these receipts and Burger King stuff in their windshield, you know what that tells you, right? They're guessing. They don't know the numbers. And if you're going to grow, if you're going to be, you have to know what metrics do I need to measure and a simple way to measure them, right? Those are really important. So that is, you need a dashboard to figure that out. And as you said, it takes some time to build some of that, right? But that is really the big part. No, we talk to folks, they have no idea what's happening. It's
Right.
all gut, right? And you have to be able to say, you know, nobody wants my product, really? How many times have you pitched that? How many sales calls have you made? How many emails have you sent? Well, I sent an email, right? Well, an email today, in today's world, is about 12 touches before anybody pays attention to you,
Right.
right?
Yes.
So if you're sending one email, that doesn't work. You need to build a campaign or a structure that you speak to these clients over and over again in a different way, right? That takes a lot of, and if you're not going to do that, you're not going to scale. You're not going to grow. You're just not. You got to know the numbers.
Yeah.
So when we talk about growth, do you see a difference between growth and scaling? And if so, what do you see that difference?
So here's the thing that I think people need to understand is that, first of all, industry you choose, the industry you choose will dictate how big your business can get, right? Because there are there are less attractive businesses and there are more attractive businesses, right? So for instance, if there is a low entry to barrier, you know, these are Porter's 5 forces, right?
Mm-hmm.
If a lot of people can get into your industry very cheaply, the chances of it being a very attractive business where you can make big money is slim. You can still be profitable in that industry, but you have to understand, is this an attractive industry or is this a unattractive industry? And I think we've talked before, owning an airline is a very unattractive industry, right? Because anybody can get into it. The product is dictated by the airports, whether you can fly in. The price of you to fly into our airport, they dictate that price. No, you don't, right?
Right.
And so there's a lot of forces at play that make something attractive or not attractive. With the way our culture and the world is changing, there are industries that were attractive that are no longer attractive. And there are industries that weren't attractive that now are. Now, again, you can make money. Landscapers make money all the time, right? And carpenters make good money all the time. But there has to be, but those are kind of unattractive industries in the sense they're easy to get into. And a lot of people are in them. So your competition is going to be huge, right? You can differentiate yourself. You can make a nice living in those industries, right? But I think that's the first point, that you have to understand what industry it is, because the market dictates how big the business will be. If somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want to do this business, and you go, who's doing that in the country? Who do you know that's doing this kind of business, right? And they go, well, nobody. Then it's probably going to be very hard for you to make money at it because people smarter than you would have thought about that, right?
Right.
And so the market dictates what happens and how big the business can get. So if you're in an industry, let's say software, AI, okay? We're in a software industry. That's an attractive industry right now. Why? Because you set the price, right? There's not a lot of people, high investment to get into it. So it's not a lot of people doing it comparative to landscape business. And so that would have a chance, but it's much harder, right? To make it because you need a lot of money to get into it, right? So that'd be one thing. So I think the industry being attractive, unattractive is the first place. The second thing is the skill of the owner, right? So your professional skill, your professional development, your ability to learn has a lot to do with it. Because to be frank, most business that are in the growth stage, the owner is the bottleneck.
Right.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, and a lot of times the owners don't realize that they are
They have
that
no idea.
bottleneck.
Yeah.
Even though they say with their words they want to grow, they can't figure out why am I not growing, and so forth. But yeah, they really need to figure out, all right, if I really want to do this, then do I need to bring other people? Probably yes. Outside advisors, someone else to help you see what you're not doing. Someone like you, Rick, that can coach them, sit with them, and so forth. That's always a key thing there.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Let's talk about this mindset of this owner. So again, let's say they've got an owner. He has started the business, or she,
Yeah.
and they have grown the business, and say they're 3 to 5 years in. Say they're 5 years in. They've got some employees. They're doing things, but they may still be operating as this same entrepreneurial business because things seem to be working. We seem to be growing. But if they really took a step back, which we're going to talk about in assessment in a little bit, if they really take a step back, take a look at this, that's where I think you talk about the bottleneck, because they're running it like they always ran it. They're making money. But if they did it, it actually created systems, created things that we're going to talk about here, they could be creating more money. And that's going to be the difference between growing and scaling.
Yeah, and one point I want to make here is, yeah, they may be growing a little bit. At some point, it stops. At some point, the business, what happens is these businesses find their market. They move through fun where they're able to do payroll, they're able to do all these things. But then they hit complexity, the complexity of the business, right? Just more sales, more people, more customers, more problems, right? And they begin to have this complexity of the business, and they don't know what to do about it. And it is at this point they need to begin to think differently as an owner. If you started a business as a small business owner and you were a solopreneur, or you and a partner or whatever, once you move into this growth phase, you have to change your mindset, and I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And there's a couple key things, right? First of all, they're still doing the work, right? On top of trying to get the proposals out, on top of, I know some people that lay in bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and they're writing proposals to send out, right? And they've been working all day, right? So they're exhausted. So they need to be able, and you go, well, you need to have more time to think about, well, how do I get that, right? And so one of the key ways is to think about time differently. You have to really think about time differently. And you have to stop becoming the doer. And so how do you get more time, right? That's the question. That's what they always ask. Well, how do I get more time? the first way to do that is to understand that you're not the doer anymore. You cannot, you need to begin to not be the doer. You need to be able to delegate and all of that. Well, how do you do that, right? Because it's easy to say, right? But how do I actually do that? So if you're an entrepreneur and you're in this owner, you're an owner, and you just, things are complex, you're worn out, you're exhausted, your wife or partner is saying, I need you to be home more. You feel all of this pressure. One of the things that you need to decide is, what does the CEO, founder, owner role now need for the business to succeed? So you now start looking at your own job description, right? So when you were a startup, it needed you to be a doer. It needed you to wear all the hats, right? But one of the things you have to understand now is you can't keep wearing all the hats, because that's where the bottleneck comes in. So you have to begin to look now as, what does the business need for the CEO to do?
Right.
So what you do, and this is the kind of the method. So you could do this, right? This would be your method. List everything you do, right? And then ask yourself, if this business is to succeed, what does the role of the CEO need to be? Pull those 3 or 4 things out, because it's not a lot. You need to pull those 3 or 4 things out. And what you're left with, you need to stop doing. Now, you cannot do that overnight. I get it. One client that I have was talking about hiring people, and we hired a few people, helped him hire a few people. But now these people are coming to him or calling him going, hey, how do I do this? What do I do here? What do I do here? And he goes, I thought you said I was going to get more time back. Now I don't have, they're calling me about that. Well, there's a simple solution for that as well, right? But the point is, the first step of getting your time back is really understanding what the role of the business needs the CEO to be. And you focus on those as priority and begin to slowly find a way to get rid of these other things. Now, how do you do that? Number one, there is so much free software available that can automate tasks that you're spending way too much time doing, right? So there's a lot of free software. Secondly, there are virtual assistants that you can hire for very cheaply that can do that work for you, right? And so you go, well, I don't want to do that. Well, you have to do something.
Yeah.
Right? It's not whether you want to do it or not. You either stop growing or you do some of these things, right? And that is just a few simple ways to get your time back. But the key is, I think, write down everything you do. Ask yourself, what does the business need my role to be? And you focus on that and try to slowly, over a period of time, find a way to get these things. And the SBDC could help you with that kind of stuff, right? Build strategy, how to get that out of the way. The second thing I want to say about that is, that's also what you should be doing with all of your jobs, all of your personnel you have. If you have an employee, because here's the way it normally works. Okay, so, well, what does this salesperson do, or what does this office worker do? I don't know, Janet's been doing that, and whatever Janet does. Well, what happens when Janet leaves, right? How do you hire for that position? And so the question you then begin to ask as an owner is, what does the company need this role to be right now? And do just like you did with the CEO. It's not what did Janet do.
Right.
It is, what did this role need? And then you build for that, right? Really important stuff.
Yeah, well, and this is where, we've talked about, again, this mindset shift, but really thinking strategically in what you're pulling together. So that's where, you talk about the owner. Well, they're thinking strategically because they've identified there are certain things that the CEO needs to do, and there's certain things that, while may still need to done, I shouldn't be doing.
And here's the question, right? Now, and this is really important. This is one of the advantages I bring to the table with my clients is that they don't have time to think strategically, right? But
Right.
if they're paying X number of dollars for a session, they make the time to think strategically. Or if they're meeting with an advisor here, it is that only time sometimes that they think strategically is when they meet with you.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the value that you bring. How do you get time? You know, I don't have time to, like I said, you're laying in bed at 2 o'clock doing proposals. When do I have time? The time for strategy is when you're meeting with an advisor. And that's the only time some of them get, right?
Right.
And that's real life right there. I mean, that really is the real life for it. So we were talking a little bit about some mindset. I've got one thing. So time, the way they think about time. Here's another, I had another client, right, that had done, this is where we help them, is that they feel like they need to be busy 8 hours a day. And we have this relationship with time, whether it is, I don't feel really good about myself if I'm not working, right?
Right.
So I need to work because I feel like a loser if I'm not working, or I don't feel worthy if I'm not working, right? Which a lot of owners do feel that way. So what happens is you have to think about time differently, and you might only do 2 things that day that are really important to move the business forward.
Right.
And you have to be okay. I did what I needed to do today. Right? So you always talk about work-life balance and all that, which I don't really believe in. But the point that I'm making is that you might have done 2 critical things that the business needed you to do, and you did it. Don't keep filling the time. Don't keep filling up the day with useless work, right? Yeah. Do what you need to do. So I think that's really important in the time part. It gives you a lot of advantages. The other thing is that I see a lot of problems with for business mindset. We're talking now about mindset and some of the changes an owner has to have. The second one that I find is really important is the relationship to debt. Because we were talking about earlier, when you're a small business, you're watching every penny, right? Or you should be, right? Because you don't have much, right? And so you have this debt aversion. A lot of people have this debt aversion that they carry with them. And it could be your family life. You grew up that way. It could be whatever, right? Or just being in a small business startup for 3 years. But when you reach this this growth phase, you have to think about debt differently because you need capital. You cannot sell enough widgets to move into a new building. You cannot sell enough widgets probably to buy this new piece of equipment that your competitor has and is kicking your butt with. You might need this or that, right? And you can't earn enough to get that. I had a client that I literally said to them, you are going to go out of business if you don't get some money. And it was a big fight over a period of time, trying to help them see this. And they finally did it, and their business took a giant leap. Right? Because this is really important. So time management, your relationship to debt. I'm not saying be frivolous, but I'm saying you have to, in a lot of cases, think about debt differently. It's a fuel, it's an asset, you know?
Yeah, I always tell this story back in they may still do it, I don't know, but Business First, local business publication here in Columbus, they used to have, and maybe they still do, an award called the Fast 50. And it was the 50 fastest growing companies in Central Ohio. Now, it wasn't always all of them because some people didn't put it in, they didn't put their financials in, they didn't have a marketing person
Yeah.
putting all their stuff out. But I remember in the early 90s where each year, at least 2 to 3 of the top 5 fastest growing businesses from the previous year were out of business before they got to the next year for exactly what you're talking about. They had the growth, but they could not fund the growth, and the sales would not handle it, or they were passing the money through and they just didn't have enough money to do what they were doing.
Exactly, and you see it. So I was watching not too long ago, SpaceX or whatever go up to get the astronauts to the space station, and they gave this stat that I forget now about how much force and energy it took to propel that thing forward. And I'm like, that's exactly like these businesses moving forward. I had a guy ask me last night, he said to me, he said, I'm thinking about, I am at a point where I probably need to get a loan for $350,000, right? Well, $350,000 to him is a lot of money, right? But he's at this point where he really needs to do that, right? And he goes, how much would that be? And so I gave him a ballpark and then told him some people to go see. That guy, though, is thinking about what I'm talking about, right? He's trying to decide, that's a lot of money for me, right? Do I do that, or do I sit here and grow really small, right? And just try to piecemeal. You asked me what growth and scale is. That's a big difference right there.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So as you're building out the business, one of the things that we've talked about, and you alluded to it a little bit, but this, again, thinking strategically about the roles required within the business. So say the CEO kind of gets strategic, does what they do. But the other part of that is thinking about the roles that you have. So we talked about his name, Janet.
Yeah.
Doing this. It's more about the role here. And then now we got to think about how do you staff that role. And it may be Janet, it may not be Janet. Janet may have been sitting in this role doing invoices for several years, but now it's too much for Janet to do by herself. And you can maybe you need to bring in somebody with higher level of education, or you need to replace it with software and doing different things. Now Janet, what are you gonna do with Janet?
Yeah. Well, one of the things, and this is just kind of a tidbit there, when you hire your first hire, don't hire them that you're going to be from now on, this is going to be what you are, right?
Right.
The business, you have to understand the environment. The business is changing constantly, right? And the person you hire for the business at this moment in time, the financial term, at this point in time, right? At this moment in time or whatever, may be really good for now. But as the business changes, as it grows, as there's more responsibility, they may or may not be able to adjust to that.
Right.
And so you don't want to set them up by going, this is your job forever, right? No, it is your job for now. And there may be some point in the future with everything happening that we move you to some place that better serves you would be better at, right? And help us help us to move along in a better way. So it's really important, because if you set that up in cement, and then it's time to move somebody, and it will be time to move somebody in this environment. Everything's happening so fast. They get their feelings hurt. What did I do wrong? Am I not producing? But if you set it up ahead of time that, hey, we're all going to be moving around probably and finding our way, that is a lot better. Or they may go, that's not for me. I don't want to be like that. I want a steady, stable thing, right? Then right? But I think the low-hanging fruit is really understand. So I would say most of these businesses do not have an org chart at all, other than it's what Charlie does in the service department, and it's what, and you need to get a lot more serious about that. As to the question again is to repeat, what does the business need that role to be to grow? And it may not be what Charlie does.
Yeah, Kevin, talk a little bit about, as it relates to some of this creation of standard operating procedures.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to have those set up. Right away out the gate, you're probably not going to have as much of that. But if you want to grow, if you want to scale any of those things, you got to have those SOPs. And that's kind of part of what Rick was just saying there, looking at the things that need to be done. And let's put that in, standard operating procedures, and then who's the right fit, for those, if Janet's still around, after, wanting to have to put her in a different spot, there may be an option based upon those job descriptions that you come up with those extra things that the CEO is doing. But as much as you can have things processed out, then you're talking about being very efficient. You can grow at a much faster pace, and those SOPs are living documents. You can change them, you can adjust them. You want to always strive for that continuous improvement, because if you don't, you're not going to grow, and you may become obsolete, like we've seen a lot of the big companies that have been around for a long time that no longer are.
Yeah, I just want to say something about that, though. They have to be, I agree, you need some kind of standard operating procedure for now, not at this time, right? But again, they can't be concrete either.
Right.
Because the role is constantly going to change, or I might need to add something different, right? So there might be something I'm the CEO doing, and I need to get rid of that, right? I might need to add it to that, right? Or whatever. And so I totally agree that you need some SOP, a way that we're doing this, but just be careful, because we're in a volatile environment.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you can't be resistant to change.
Yeah.
You got to be able to adjust those for the times.
Yeah, and that's for another discussion where all that becomes a huge problem in the company, right? But at this point, we're just trying to figure that out.
So let's say, kind of recap a little bit. We've talked about this owner, the mindset change, being more strategic, being able to determine what their role really is, what they do, and how that impacts the company positively, and how the other stuff gets to be done. Delegation, different things like that, and getting, I hate to use this analogy, but getting the right people on the bus and all that.
For sure.
But as the owner, it's got to be daunting. They can sit down and say, all right, here's everything I do. And here's the 3 or 4 things that I need to do. And somebody else got to do these other 175 things.
Yeah.
But how do they really sit down and take a look at the business? So, they can hire somebody to come in. There's all kinds of consultants and different things like that will come in and do strategic planning and different things like that. You got to make sure that they're doing it from a business perspective, not just an organic thing. But, we have a tool with the SBDC that I know you're familiar with. Kevin is familiar with. Kevin is one of the power users in the country on this. Can you guys share this tool and talk about how you utilize this in helping entrepreneurs, helping the owner? So you guys talk about these few slides and how that can be used by an entrepreneur.
So the way I use this is what we call a assessment tool from Growth Wheel, which is a model that we use. And I know Kevin's really good about understanding it as well. It's basically divided. They take a business and they divide it into four focus areas, which is business concept, customer relations, organization, and operations. And it doesn't matter what your business is, what industry you're in, or it doesn't matter what size of your business. All businesses have these 20 focus areas of your business. So for instance, up in the top left, product portfolio, ownership and board, employees. Come over to the blue part, IT systems, that's becoming huge. We all wrestle with all of these aspects of business. And this is simply a visual tool that gives us an understanding of all those different areas that you and me and all of us face. So that's what that slide's representing, that there are these 20 things that every business owner has to deal with in their business, despite size or industry. We can go through, if you go to the next one, Will. This, because that one wasn't showing up. This is an assessment tool. Can you go back? It didn't look like it was showing the center.
It's showing up. It's showing up here. We just can't see it. It's actually on here.
Oh, okay.
Okay, cool.
Great. So if you look at this, this assessment or this screening, you see the bullseye in the middle, and then you see segments going out toward the outer rim. And this is an assessment that we use. So we talk to you about your business idea, your product portfolio, how well you're doing with your sales and service. And then you grade yourself, and the ones closest to the bullseye, let's say you're doing 25%, and you can show that next one, I'll kind of show that a little bit. You would go around each of these areas and it would look like this. So in this model, if you look at the sales and service part in the upper right-hand corner, they have two segments blocked off. That's 50%. So they feel like they're doing 50% as far as sales and service goes. So that is kind of average or below average a little bit. There you go. Let's take one they're doing great at. So legal issues, the red, they are doing 100%. They feel like their contracts are well ready to go. All their agreements, employee agreements are good. So they're doing 100%. And what this does is it allows you to go through from business idea all around the circle and grade yourself on how you feel like you're doing with your business in all of these areas. So it gives you a really nice idea picture. So you could see, if I would ask you, how are they doing, let's say, with their employees section, they're doing 75%. They feel like they're doing pretty well there, and they're doing well with partnerships and, as I said, legal issues. But notice the facilities, they're not doing great there, only 25%. And so this is, the owner has identified these things. They have filled that out, and now you have a really good 360-degree look at how your business is performing and where you're performing well and where you're not performing well.
What if the owner's got some blind spots here and thinks that, hey, I'm doing 75% or I'm doing 100, and they're really not, because maybe they don't understand the growth piece. So this one's got funding at 100%. And that maybe that's funding to here.
Yeah.
Versus funding to scale, which they may only be at 50% if they're really thinking of that.
Yeah, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, so in that instance there, that's a good start of a conversation to just make sure, all right, are you sure these areas that you think you're really good in?
Yeah.
Are you really good at it? Let's explore that just to make sure.
They should have some rationale for why they put that too.
Right. Yeah.
So in a dialogue or in a meeting, you can say, okay, let's kind of walk around this thing and show me why you said what you said.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
maybe they're beating themselves up on market position and they're really not that bad
Right.
at
Yeah.
25. But they should have a rationale for why they're saying it, not just, hey, I like the color and I'm going to color. I like the blue one.
Yeah.
Well,
And here's the other thing. This works as well. So let's say now we have a growth company.
Yeah.
And we're looking now to enter a new market. right? We want to, want to add a new product.
Yeah,
So you could use this assessment for that, right? So you could look at the market positioning, right? And go, have you looked or done any research on this, who's doing this as a competitor around you? And you take this look of now all the competitors and where they're playing. And then you can say, all right, is there an area that I could put this product or service that no one else is playing in? And maybe I'll adjust it a little bit because there's too many, I'm not competing with that company that's that's really just smoking in that area. I don't want to compete with them head on. But is there an area I could adjust this that nobody's really, it's an underserved area? And could I move my part there? So that's all the marketing position. I see this a lot with people that they come in, and you probably see this at the center. I need marketing. I need marketing. I need marketing, right? Well, a little dialogue and discussion, you find out, no, they need to know who their customer is.
Yes.
And so over in customer portfolio, who are you trying to market to? Everybody. I'm trying to market. No, you're not. That's not what you need right now. So then you can take that on dialogue and go back to customer position and start working with them on that.
Yeah.
And I know you guys are laughing because you probably hear that all the time, right?
Absolutely.
And so I get it. Everybody thinks they just need more Facebook posts or they need to, no. Who are you talking to, right? So those are some of the ways you can use this as a diagnostic tool. But for an owner, they feel relieved when they see this
right.
because it's a visual look. Oh, I always thought that was true, but now it's easy for me. And it takes 10 minutes literally to do this, right? And they have this sense of relief. Now, the second part that we help them do is then we will say, let's identify and this is one way we could do it if we're looking for how to ramp up some of their business, right? Go to your lowest ones that you did 25% on up toward the ones you did the least well on and circle those. And that's why we see market position, networking, branding. We see they're not doing great on any of those facilities, as I mentioned. They've circled those, right? And then the conversation is based on where you are right now. Let's pick 1, 2, or 3 of these. Which one do you think is most vital that we work on right now? And so now we've identified some weaknesses. We have now begun to identify which one, and the owner is doing that, right? They are the ones that are doing it. It's not you telling them, I think you need to work on this. No, they are identifying, I need to work on this, right? And then that helps you as an advisor or as for them themselves to begin to focus on that one area or 2 areas, because you can't fix them all at one time. And they feel when that's done and they have, all right, I know I'm going to do I'm going to do this, right? I'm going to work on my market positioning. Then you as an advisor can help them with that, right? Or they can do it on their own in that way. And they feel a sense of relief that I have a direction. I know, at least it's not all in my head. I at least have some clarity.
Right. And they have that focus that they've been struggling with. They know they got problems. This tool is just great. And they come to that realization, here's where I need, and it's just, you're right. I always see the relief in clients.
Total relief. Yeah, total relief.
So when we have, it's easy to see, kind of especially within the context of what we've been talking about, where you have an entrepreneur, you have an owner that's growing, really needs to start making that strategic shift, can come in here and do this and see where there's weaknesses, areas that they need to focus on, areas maybe they need to start building out different systems and different pieces of parts like that. But you could have a business theoretically that rolls in here. We don't see a lot of these that's showing it's pretty strong in everything, but that's because it's strong to here. Now they want to go here. So they need to be able to say, okay, I need now shift from here to here. And all of a sudden, the boxes that are filled out become less and less because now we see that strategically for us to actually grow and go from $500,000 to $2 million, this is what we're gonna have to do.
For sure, and it's gonna only happen by, so for instance, one of the ways you might do that is by buying another business, right? So this is really common right now, so I know there's a lot of, there's an electrical company not near me that's pretty good, they're pretty good size, they're growing. Well, they were having such problems hiring employees that were good electricians or whatever, that their strategy was to just buy mom and pop electric shops all around that where they're ready to retire and then keep the people on, right?
Okay.
They didn't need the business. They didn't need the book, but they needed the employee, right? And most mom and pops want their employees who have been with them to be taken care of when they're done. So if you say to the seller, I will retain this employee and give them work and let them and treat them well and all of that. And that was literally their strategy for hiring, was buying businesses. Well, to do that, you need to be able to get some funding, right?
Right.
And you need to have some investment and capital into the business, right? So all those things kind of play out and they help you to identify if, let's say that's one of your strategies, you could begin to look at this and see the areas where, okay, like you're saying, we need to develop this, we need to develop this. And so I think it's really important. And I love using this, as I said before, if you are going to start a new product, a new service, that means you need to look at your product portfolio. You need to build out a different product. You need to figure out how you're going to sell it. Maybe it's a subscription model, right? Instead of just a price. Maybe you need to figure out then a whole new customer market you never had before. And who is that? And a new market position. How do I get funding for it? How does the IT place come into that? That's one of the areas that's really big as you're growing, is the IT part. So anyway, so there's some of the areas. It's a real flexible tool.
Rick, when you're working with business owners at this level that need to do these types of things,
Yeah.
To grow, we talked about that they need to have a mindset change and stuff like that. You see that sometimes their ego gets in the way of trying to do some of these things?
No, I think by the time they get here,
Yeah.
they don't have much of an ego, right? They have been beat up and they feel so inadequate, right? Nobody needs to talk because they know they're behind on their proposals. They know their business is a mess. They know all that and they just don't know what to do with it, right? They don't have time. Literally, most of these people, I just texted a client of mine who was supposed to give me something a month ago. And I texted him while I was sitting in the car before I came in. And he goes, it's going to have to wait till July. He goes, we're all just underwater, right? They're so busy that sometimes and that's the reality of it, right? I thought it was kind of funny on this panel I was with this quick wings or whatever it's called. Guys real no nonsense, and all that. And somebody in the audience asked about how do you build a culture? It's like an Instagram, like how do you build a culture where all your people feel wonderful and you feel great? I could see his eyes roll back in his head. And afterwards, he said something, but afterwards in the elevators we're walking out, he goes, well, here's my customer, culture is show up on time, do your job, get your paycheck and go home, right? Like there's no fluff here, right? Where we're building this internet culture, right? Where, and I get you need to take care of employees and stuff, but he didn't even know what they were talking about. And that's really when if you're trying to build your landscaping business to be the number one, if you're trying to do whatever it is, you don't have time to be thinking about those kind of things. And I think sometimes these young business owners especially get caught up in treating employees a certain way. And you should, I'm not saying you shouldn't, but this is real life we're talking about.
Right.
And it's hard, it's tiring, it's grinding. You know what I mean?
Kevin, when do you start using these tools?
Well, I mean, I can, I use these sometimes even with my early stage companies, just because I think it helps them with the challenge of the focus. Because, I mean, the beginning stages, Rick mentioned wearing all the hats, and I told him you're wearing all the hats. This is a great thing for that stage as well as the growth stage, because at that stage, it's Friday, they've left their job to pursue this business. Say, for instance, they're walking out Friday on a high note, saying their goodbyes. Monday rolls around, they're in their kitchen and they're running their business, and they're like, oh man, where do I start at? So
I have no idea.
yeah, it's just, I mean, so, it can be overwhelming. So something like this allows them to get that focus that they need. Because again, focus is a big challenge we see with a lot of our entrepreneurs, because there is so many things, there's so many distractions. So I mean, I see this tool as something that I use quite often, regardless of the stage.
Yeah.
And one other thing about that, by the time, this is really important, by the time the owners reach us, they have listened to 250 podcasts, growth gurus, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's telling them to do something different.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do.
Right.
By the time they have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
Right. And it is these tools and the consulting and the advising from SBDC that helps bring that clarity, right?
Yeah.
And it brings a voice and a model that's tested, and they can stop, kind of like relax.
Exactly.
Finally, I found an answer that is right here. I can touch or see or whatever, right?
Yeah, because a lot of times they don't have anyone to go to. It can be lonely as a entrepreneur at the
super
top
lonely.
there, and it's like, where do I go? Where do I go for this? And that's where I see outside advisors as being really necessary, because it just allows you to just bounce things off and just give you that guidance and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a great point though, because there's just so much out there now. There's so much information just at your fingertips. I mean, like you said, you can go podcast and YouTube and different things like that. We're not even talking about a paid consultant or a coach or anything like that. We're talking about a freebie stuff that can just get you overwhelmed.
Yeah. Oh,
And then you don't know, this person says X, Y, and Z. All right, well, I can see that. And you go down that path. Well, really, you shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z. You're doing A, B, and C.
And we all have people in our lives that have never run a business at all, but they're giving their advice.
They know that.
Right? Yeah. And so it's even more confusing. And then you have all the family relationships that you don't want to be like,
It's Thanksgiving time. You won't even want.
Everybody wants to give you their idea, right? This is what you should be doing. You sure you want to do that? Right? And
Go back to your job. They're going to tell you, right?
Right. And so, dream killer. And which, I mean, there's sometimes you need to do that, right? But the point I'm making is that there's so much advantage with the tools, with the experience, with the understanding that I think it's really helpful. That's why I love what you guys do. I think it's really important.
Great. Kevin, do you have anything else you want to touch on this, or can we pull this down?
Yeah, we can go ahead and shut this down here.
All right, great. Well, that was easier to pull it up.
Not sure what happened there.
So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up again, which is a little longer than we would normally go, but it's because we know that these are issues that we see all the time. And these are issues we see with companies that are looking to grow. And, there's a whole set of issues for the startup, and there's a whole set of issues for them around funding and those early stage businesses and things of that nature. And there's no shortage of support entities helping those groups, right? But, I don't know that it's, while there is a lot of stuff out there, I don't know that anybody's really taking the time to, in a format like this, say, this is what this entrepreneur is going through, and this is how they get to shift so that they can continue this business growing and get to where they want to get to.
Yeah, and I think the point is what got you to this point won't take you to the next level. There has to be some personal development, there has to be some strategic and operational development to make it to the next point.
Great. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up on that. I want to thank Kevin Hammond, Rick Slark. This has been great. And I hope that everyone enjoyed this and got something out of this. If you are watching this live or if you watch this on YouTube and you want to explore this further, if you want to utilize these tools, I will say that in Ohio, for sure, all the SBDCs connect with Growth Wheel. Now, these two guys are experts. They may be a little bit higher end than a lot of them, but you can use these tools and go from there. So we want to be here to support you. We want to be here to help you, and we definitely want to be here to help Jenny.
Yeah.
Who in the chat said
I love
she was one of
that.
those
Yeah.
2 a.m.
Thanks for sharing that.
So
Hi, Manuel. Good
Yeah.
to see you.
So anyway, again, thanks very much. We really appreciate everybody joining us for our 50th episode of Small Business Breakthroughs. We look forward to continuing to bring this kind of business knowledge. I like to say business knowledge from the trenches. This is stuff we see all the time. So thank you guys for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again on Small Business Breakthroughs. Thank you very much.